The Urantia book. Paper 117, God the Supreme. The great challenge that has been given to mortal man is this. Will you decide to personalize the experienceable value meanings of the cosmos into your own evolving selfhood? So it just goes on and on with what it wants to say here about God the Supreme. This book is about perfecting as a human being as Jesus of Nazareth was. Jesus of Nazareth is the bestowal of Michael of Nebanon. Michael of Nebanon, the universal creator, ruler, maker, bestowed himself on this planet as Jesus of Nazareth. So perfection in the Urantia book is living a perfect character in terms of love, goodness, meekness, strength, etc., etc. Living that type of a mentality, living that type of a lifestyle in terms of mind, body, and emotions. That's the goal. That's the goal throughout this book for any given human evolutionary will being, such as me, you, any human evolutionary will being. That's the goal, is to live in perfection in that sense. Perfect character is what's important. Section 5, the oversoul of creation. As the ascending mortal passes beyond the boundaries of his local universe of origin, he is not entirely deprived of the ministry of the spirit of truth, which has so constantly taught and guided him through the philosophic mazes of the material and morontial worlds in every crisis of ascension, unfailingly directing the paradise pilgrim, ever saying, this is the way. So, human evolutionary will beings, mortals on this earth, we go to the mansion worlds, higher spheres, eventually to meet God himself, the first person of the Trinity, the universal Father, as described in the Urantia book. The Urantia book. Meet the first person of the Trinity as described in the Urantia book, and receive the embrace of the first person of the Trinity, the universal Father. And then, so that's the goal. That's the goal for any human evolutionary will being on any of potential 7 trillion human evolutionary will being planets in the grand universe. The first level outside of the Paradise of Ona system, the Paradise of Ona perfect spheres and system outside of that, the grand universe. Is the evolutionary creation. So this world is an evolutionary creation. Obviously. So in terms of growth towards perfection, in terms of the character of every single human being on the planet. So so while that's the path for any ascending being, this sentence is saying the spirit of truth remains with human evolutionary well-being after he leaves this world, the universe capital, Salvington, and continues onward. The spirit of truth is still with that person in some sense, I believe is what the Urantia book is saying here. The spirit of truth is the spirit left by Jesus of Nazareth, who was Michael of Nebanon, the universe creator, ruler of this local universe, bestowed himself on this world as Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus of Nazareth left the spirit of truth here at Pentecost. It's described in the Urantia book. I would say it's fairly accurate in terms of what the Bible says about Pentecost and the spirit of truth. There's some accuracy there. Overall, decently accurate in the Bible. But the Urantia book gives a much fuller story, a more complete story about what actually took place at Pentecost and things of this nature. The entire life of Jesus is in the Urantia book in the fourth part of the book. So the morontial means what we look like, or what material is, quote unquote material, like relatively, not material, physical material, but whatever it is, what we look like. It's not spirit form, but it's not material. It's something else. It's called morontial in this book. So after this life in the flesh, our forms are morontial, is what they say, not physical matter, but morontial, whatever it is. And eventually, we receive spirit forms. But so going from the material to the morontial worlds and continuing on. But the spirit of truth stays with the human evolutionary will creature, the spirit of truth that he had while he was on this planet, given to him and given to this planet by Michael of Nebadon, Jesus of Nazareth. When you leave the domains of the local universe, I mean, that's what I would say about that sentence, sort of, kind of. When you leave the domains of the local universe through the ministry of the spirit of the emerging supreme being and through the provisions of superuniverse reflectivity, you will still be guided in your paradise ascent by the comforting directive spirit of the paradise bestowal sons of God, such as myself. So as any human leaves their world, their evolutionary world, leaves their evolutionary world, dies and moves on, leaves their evolutionary world, and is resurrected, etc. It goes on. But as you leave the domains of this local universe, anyone leaves the domains of this local universe, there is the ministry of the spirit of the emerging supreme being. The supreme being is the eventual ruler of the grand universe. When the grand universe is settled in light and life, when every being in the grand universe has a perfect character, as God, the first person of the Trinity, would have that character be, have that person be, when everyone has achieved that state of perfection to God's satisfaction in the grand universe in terms of goodness, then the supreme being will come into existence in the evolutionary creation, and his headquarters will be on the seventh superuniverse, Orvanton, the capital of which is Uversa. Through the provisions of superuniverse reflectivity, there's a lot of discussion in this book about superuniverse reflectivity, what that means. Information that is instantaneously received by higher beings on high. Like if a higher sphere, a higher being of some kind on some higher sphere wants information of any kind from anywhere, there's the reflectivity service where he instantly gets that type of information. That's one sentence I would say about it. The book discusses reflectivity. There's a lot of discussion in the book. I mean, not a tremendous amount, but quite a bit, quite a bit of discussion about what reflectivity means in terms of information gathering, or whatever. There's a lot of information about it. So that's there for help in terms of the path to the universal Father, the first person of the Trinity, and still guided in your paradise ascent by was given by Jesus of Nazareth. So I also am a paradise bestowal son, a magisterial avonal son, currently on a mission here, a bestowal mission on Urantia, this planet called Urantia. I am doing that right now, and as a male child born of woman, and so I'm doing a bestowal mission as a magisterial avonal sons. The magisterial avonal sons, what they do in their missions is described in the Urantia book. Same for the creator sons. Michael of Nebadon as Jesus of Nazareth is is a creator son, local universe, creator ruler. And but so the spirit of truth that Michael of Nebadon left on this planet will not change at all after my bestowal, after my life in the flesh, after I leave my life in the flesh and go on. The spirit of truth on this planet will not change at all. But I'll have something to do with it as a bestowal son on this sphere. So for me, as a magisterial avonal son, when I have in the past lived bestowal lives on other planets in Nebadon, and after my life in the flesh now, down the road later, I will live lives as a bestowal son, as a magisterial bestowal son, avonal bestowal son on other human evolutionary will-being planets in Nebadon. And for all those beings, all those human evolutionary will creatures who come from those planets, they will still be guided in their paradise ascent by the comforting directive spirit that I will have left there, whether I've left it there. Well, okay. So any planet that I have done a bestowal on previously, the spirit of truth on that planet has changed in some fashion to reflect or be the spirit of the creator son, Michael of Nebadon, because Michael of Nebadon has finished his 7 bestowals amongst the creatures of his own making. So he is now a sovereign of Nebadon. His last bestowal was as Jesus of Nazareth, but he's finished that. So all the spirit of truths, all the comforting directive spirits of all the previous planets that I in particular, or any magisterial avonal son, has done a bestowal mission on in Nebadon, all of those spirit of truths more directly are of the creator son, Michael of Nebadon. Link. So in any planet that I would do a bestowal mission on in the future as a magisterial avonal son, doing a avonal bestowal as a baby born of woman on some other planet, some other human evolutionary will-being planet in Nebadon. This local universe is called Nebadon. Any avonal bestowal I would do on those spheres, those human evolutionary will-beings who leave that world, die and move on, die resurrected and move on, those beings in their paradise ascent to the universal Father, the first person of the Trinity, they will be guided by the comforting directive spirit of the spirit of truth left on that planet. Any spirit of truth that I leave on any planet where I personally, or any magisterial avonal son does on any human evolutionary will-being planet in Nebadon, the spirit of truth left there will be of, reflect, be of, will be more like, exactly like, the spirit of truth of Michael of Nebadon, the creator ruler of this local universe, because he has completed his 7 bestowals amongst the creatures of his own making, and he is now sovereign of Nebadon in the Urantia book. These things are discussed in the Urantia book. Topics like this. Paper 117, Section 6, Paragraph 10. All true love is from God, and man receives the divine affection as he himself bestows this love upon his fellows. So, lovely sentences in here. This paragraph in particular has many more lovely ideas in it in terms of truth and love and things of this nature. So, the book is constantly, well, no, if not constantly, very often referring to the love of God. Of course, this book wants to get that point across. So it mentions it throughout the entire book. The first five papers are the first five papers are about the universal Father, the first person of the Trinity, and then and so of course they mention the love of God much in there, and then throughout the entire book, the love of the first person, the universal Father is the name given to him in the Urantia book. The first person, the love of God, is mentioned throughout the book. It's primal, out of whatever. It's important. I mean, here's a lovely sentence. Love is dynamic, period. It can never be captured. It is alive, free, thrilling, and always moving. So on and on. It has a lot of lovely sentences in here. Very good book. Well worth knowing the information in this book. Real truth in this book. See the Bible line here, the Father is no respecter of persons. It's not in quotes, so I'm quoting from the Urantia book, but I know that line is in the Bible. Yeah, so they clarify the statement, they explain the statement. Right after that, they say, he treats each of his ascending sons as cosmic individuals. So I don't know. For me, God is no respecter of persons in the sense that your function or your job as a spirit being or as a human, as any type of being anywhere in existence, anywhere, doing anything, as any type of being anywhere, your function, your job is not what's important in the sense that your character is what's important. Are you loving, good, kind, honest, sincere, all that and more, strong, with vitality, lucidity, awareness, strength, kindness, meekness, discipline, morals, all of that. Are you all of that? Am I all of that? Is anyone all of that? That's what's important. So that in that sense, so God is no respecter of persons. He doesn't care what you do in the sense of like what you do. It's more of who you are. That's the key. God is no respecter of persons in that sense. He has, it's not about what you do. It's about who you are as a being, as a person. That's something I would personally say, I guess, about the idea of God is no respecter of persons. Paper 118. Section 5, omnipotence and composability. Composability. Not sure what that word means. What's possible? The omnipotence of deity does not imply the power to do the non-doable. So it goes on from there. It talks about what it wants to talk about that subject in the supreme and ultimate, time and space, paper 118. So this is going to be fairly intellectual knowledge, even more so than the rest of the book, like other parts of the book, using terms and ideas that are generally not used in conventional literature or spiritual literature in general on this earth. So a lot of terms and ideas that are exclusive to the Urantia book and fairly heady in a sense, like intellectual, a little bit harder to understand than easier parts of the book to understand as far as what they're trying to say in terms of truth. They bring in, new words that are original to the Urantia book, I believe, more or less, quite a bit in some of these type papers here where they're talking about this type of thing. the foreword, other spots. Section 6, omnipotence and omniscience. God is truly omnipotent, but he is not omniscient. Omniscient? Ugh. He does not personally do all that is done. So it just goes on and on, what it wants to say about that type of idea in terms of God and others and what people do and what human evolutionary will beings do and what spirits do and other higher beings and lower beings and how it works, what happens. They like to use this word absonite, absonite, and super absonite to have something to do with eternity, whatever that means in terms of what they're trying to explain here in the Urantia book. But lovely sentences, you know. So the whole sentence itself is, when man chooses to find God and to be like him, such a choice is super finite. So to me, super finite, you know, greater than materiality. Greater than temporarity. Temporarity is not a word, but you know, greater than what's temporal. Such a choice is super finite. Only eternity can disclose whether this choice is also super absonite, whatever that sentence means in terms of eternity. After human evolutionary will beings become finaliters, going on to the next outer space level and past that to more outer space levels. Four outer space levels are described in the Urantia book. Section 7, omniscience and predestination. Sin in time-conditioned space clearly proves the temporal liberty, even license of the finite will. So, I mean, that sentence is basically saying you can sin if you want to, right? Temporal liberty, even license of the finite will. Sin can occur if a being wants to, in a sense, is what that sentence is saying, as I would describe it briefly in this moment. So 118, section 10 is functions of providence. The Father, Son, and Spirit, as the Trinity, are not the Almighty Supreme, but the supremacy of the Almighty can never be manifest without them. On and on about what it wants to say about that. I would have to read more about that to really have something to say about that sentence in particular. The Almighty Supreme is definitely defined in the foreword, maybe, or other places, what the Almighty Supreme means. All these terms are fairly well defined, or I would say always defined in the Urantia book in terms of what they really mean. And then they just use them here and there throughout the book. The growth of the Almighty is centered on the absolutes of actuality and predicated on the absolutes of potentiality. So again, you know, terms like that, they're explaining something, and it's good to know. It's good to know. But you know exactly what they're referring to. I could probably come up with more about it if I referenced it to the foreword and looked at more of these paragraphs in this particular section 10 of paper 118 and tried to fully understand what they're trying to say. Absolutes, the different absolutes are defined and discussed in different parts of the book, especially the foreword. Paper 119, the bestowals of Christ Michael. Oh, yay. The attribute of bestowal is in is inherent in the paradise sons of the universal Father. So Michael of Nebadon is a paradise son of the universal Father. He's a paradise son of the universal Father and the eternal Son in terms of a child created by the universal Father, the first person of the Trinity, and the second person of the Trinity. The eternal Son is the name they give him in the Urantia book. And those first two members of the Trinity create Michael's sons. They're saying this fairly generically, this one sentence here. The attribute of bestowal is inherent in myself as a paradise son of the universal Father. I, as a magisterial avonal son, am born of the second two persons of the Trinity, the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit, give birth to beings of my order, the magisterial avonal sons, the secondary order to the primary order, the creator sons, the Michaels, the secondary order, and this group of the sons of God would be the magisterial avonal sons, such as myself. So Michael of Nebadon bestowed himself on this world as Jesus of Nazareth, as a paradise son. I, as a magisterial avonal son, am currently bestowing myself on this world as a male child born of woman. Well, they're saying the attribute of bestowal is inherent in myself as a magisterial avonal son. It's inherent in the paradise sons of the universal Father. I'm a paradise son of the universal Father for certain. So in their desire to come close to the life experiences of their subordinate living creatures, the various orders of the paradise sons, such as myself, are reflecting the divine nature of their paradise parents. So Michael of Nebadon, Jesus of Nazareth, reflects the divine nature of the universal Father and the eternal Son. I reflect the divine nature of the eternal Son and the infinite Spirit. In my desire to come close to the life experiences of humans on Urantia, I reflect the divine nature of my paradise parents. So, but this paper is about the bestowals of Christ Michael. This paper is about Jesus of Nazareth, Michael of Nebadon, the bestowals of Christ Michael, the 7 bestowals amongst the creatures of his own making. That's what this paper is about. So that's what this paragraph, of course, is explicitly concerning itself with, talking about. So Michael of Nebadon's, Jesus of Nazareth's desire to come close to the life experiences of his subordinate living creatures, the humans of the evolutionary worlds, such as this one, Urantia, in potential 10 million human evolutionary worlds similar to this planet Urantia in the universe of Nebadon. So in Michael of Nebadon's desire to come close to the life experiences of human evolutionary will beings on human evolutionary will planets, such as this one, Urantia, where this is the one he came to, Urantia. This is the only one he will ever come to. This is the only one he has ever come to, and the only one he will ever come to as a human, as a baby born of woman. Michael of Nebadon does this once. He did it once in his entire career as Jesus of Nazareth on this particular planet, Urantia. And Jesus of Nazareth was reflecting the divine nature of his paradise parents, the universal Father and the eternal Son. And the eternal Son not necessarily and here, but the eternal Son continues to bestow himself upon the local universes of space in the persons of his representatives, the Michael and Avonal sons, such as myself, and Avonal son. So the eternal Son continues to bestow himself, the eternal Son bestows himself right now on urantia in my person. The eternal Son bestows himself on urantia, has bestowed himself on urantia as Jesus of Nazareth, who was the incarnation of Michael of Nebadon. Michael of Nebadon incarnated on this sphere as Jesus of Nazareth. These are terms and ideas discussed in the Urantia book. But the eternal Son continues to bestow himself on all 7 trillion human evolutionary will-being planets, similar to Urantia, in the grand universe. On all those planets will receive at least one bestowal, virtually always one bestowal. Very rare exceptions to one bestowal, super very rare exceptions to one bestowal. But every planet receives one bestowal of a Michael or an Avonal son. Every other planet of the 10 million receives an Avonal son, whereas the one planet receives a Michael son. But so on all 7 trillion human evolutionary will-being planets, eventually, in the evolutionary creation of the grand universe, they will all receive a Michael or Avonal bestowal, and it's in truth, the eternal Son is bestowing himself when a Michael son lives a life on Earth, such as Jesus of Nazareth, or if I do a bestowal on a human evolutionary will-being planet, then I too am showing the eternal Son. On any human evolutionary will-being planet in the grand universe. So the eternal Son continues to bestow himself upon the local universes of space in the persons of his representatives. Myself as a magisterial Avonal son, Michael of Nebadon, Jesus of Nazareth as a creator son, and other magisterial Avonal sons, 1,062 of us in this particular local universe of Nebadon. So the eternal Son bestows himself upon Urantia in my person. The eternal Son has previously bestowed himself upon Urantia in the person of Michael of Nebadon, Jesus of Nazareth, who was here approximately 2,000 years ago.